Welcome to Math Problem of the Month. In this video, we will discuss the junior high problem for February 2019. An animation will explain the problem statement later. Here we go. This problem is called the handshaking problem. There are a few variations to such problem. We shall introduce the problems now. This are Mr. and Mrs. They invited 5 other couples to their house for a party. These were the 5 couples. There was a round of handshaking. There was a simple rule observed. No one shook hands with oneself, nor with one's spouse, and no one shook hands with the same person more than once. Afterwards, Mr. Homer asked everyone except himself, "How many persons have you shaken hands with?" Each of these 11 people answered Mr. Homer with a different answer. Here is your task. Find out how many hands did Mrs. Homer. To answer this question, we call the condition of the handshaking for this problem. It is not difficult to see that the largest possible number is 10 and the least number is 0. In fact, the possible numbers are 0, 1, 2, up to 10. These are 11 different numbers. Note that there are 11 people and 11 distinct numbers, which means that one number is assigned to one people. It's very important to note that one number is assigned to one people as we will refer to it frequently. Now suppose 10 is assigned to Mrs. Homer. What does it mean? It means that she shook hands with everyone and that everyone from these 11 people shook hands at least once. However, this contradicts to the statement that one number is assigned to one people, as the number 0 is unable to be assigned. Hence, the assumption that 10 is assigned to Mrs. Homer was wrong. 10 is assigned to somebody except for Mrs. Homer. Say it was assigned to Mrs. Popeye. Now everyone except Mr. Popeye shook hands at least once. As one number is assigned to one people, the number 0 is therefore have to be assigned to Mr. Popeye. We may assume 9 is assigned to Mrs. Homer this time round. This means that she shook hands to everyone except Mr. Popeye, together with the fact that Mrs. Popeye shook hands with everyone. Now everyone from these 9 people shook hands at twice. Now the number 1 is unable to be assigned, and this is a contradiction. So the number 9 is not assigned to Mr. Homer, and he has to be assigned to somebody else. Dr. Maisha McStuffins. By using the same argument, her spouse, Mr. Stuffins, is the only one that should hand not more than 1. Hence, the number 1 is assigned to him. Similarly, there will be contradiction if Mrs. Homer is assigned the number 8, 7, or 6. And finally, we conclude that the number 5 is assigned to Mrs. Homer. We solved the problem. The answer for this is 5. Hope that you enjoyed the lesson. Thank you and bye-bye.